Hello everyone, thank you for coming out. I want to brief you on this deputy involved shooting we had this morning. Kenneth Layton lives at 1505 Saddlehorn Drive. Kenneth is 60 years of age, and we are told that his wife died approximately 2 months ago from cancer. We're still verifying that. So at about 10:20 this morning, Kenneth calls the sheriff's office, dials 911, and he says a suspicious person is knocking on his door and he believes that he has a gun. So our deputies are dispatched. Our 911 operators stay on the phone with him, and he tells us that he sees a shadow. He hears a man's voice. He said he's got a gun. So the deputies are coming to the scene. Our folks are talking to Kenneth on the phone, and he's hyperventilating. And they continue to tell him, take deep breaths, calm down, it's all right. Are your doors locked? You're inside. The deputy will be there in a minute. Stay on the phone with me. Our deputies arrive. She says, I want you to go to the front door. The deputy will be knocking at the door, and talk to the deputy. He still has the phone connected to the communications center, and during this 911 call, we hear the deputy all of a sudden start screaming, put the gun down, put the gun down, drop the gun. Let me stop there to tell you the deputy has walked up, he's knocking on the door. No one answers the door for 5 or 10 seconds. And he says all of a sudden the door swings open and no one's standing there. So the deputy is now very suspicious, and he angles toward and looks inside the house, and there is Kenneth pointing a firearm at him. And he starts screaming, put the gun down, put the gun down. He's thinking, the deputy's thinking, well, we've got a scared homeowner who has a suspicious person knocking on the door saying he's got a gun. So the deputy backs away from the door, all the while identifying himself and telling him to put the gun down. He backs around the door and back around his patrol car. Kenneth follows him out of the house with a gun down to his side. The deputy telling him put the gun down, and all of a sudden he points the gun at the deputy. When he does, the deputy shoots one time, strikes him in the chest, and he goes down, and obviously he's deceased. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a classic suicide by cop. This man, Mr. Layton, Kenneth Layton, also had dinner the night before on Thanksgiving with some of his neighbors, and he was talking to his neighbors about how much he missed his wife. We've had a preliminary conversation with his son in Hernando County, and it's my understanding at this time that the son said that yes, he was afraid that his dad might hurt himself because he's so distraught over the loss of his wife. This is a horrible event to occur to anyone, and certainly now I've got a 15-year deputy by the name of Chad Nichols, who's very experienced. Chad Nichols is as good as any deputy that's ever walked the face of the earth, who's got to live with this for the rest of his life. And all he was doing was defending himself. But Chad said it became abundantly evident that he was going to make me shoot him. And I even gave him the latitude, as long as the gun was down at the side, even after he followed me out of the house, to put the gun down. And then when he pointed it at me, he left me no choice. So the investigation is ongoing. As you know, we do an investigation by our homicide team. Our administrative investigation would do a separate investigation. We have notified the state attorney's office. They've been on scene. They've since left. They would do an independent investigation, as well as the medical examiner would do an investigation as well. 4 standard investigations. As is protocol, Deputy Nichols will be on administrative leave with pay through the initial stages of the investigation. Now, once again, this event started about 10:20 this morning. The deputy arrived about 10:30 this morning and we're giving you all of the information as we understand it at this time. Let me underscore, if there are any changes in information, we'll present that to you. But I've listened to the 911 tape, I've listened to the dispatch tapes, and I've had the opportunity to speak with Deputy Nichols, and there are neighbors that also verify that Kenneth Layton, who was 60 years old, was exceptionally distraught over the death of his wife. And it's just a sad situation. I'm sorry he put us in that situation. I'm sorry he didn't allow us to help him. He made a poor choice in our estimation. And it was obvious from the very beginning when he called and he was hyperventilating. He was scared, but he was moving forward with his plan to create an environment to force us to shoot him, and that's what happened this morning. Okay? Are there any questions?
There never was a suspicious person.
There never was a suspicious person. We see 0. The call originated from inside the house by Mr. Layton. The neighbors have a video. It is not a continuous video, but it's motion activated. During the time where he said there was a suspicious person outside, the camera activated. We see absolutely any evidence at all of a suspicious person. And when you listen, as we have to the 911 tapes, and certainly after our detectives are finishing listening to that, you can hear him talking about, I see a shadow. Guy knocked at the door. He said he had a gun. So what he, in effect, did was he narrated his own circumstance. He was the guy with a gun in the house, and there never was anyone that we see any evidence was at the house. Okay?
Can you talk a little bit about, in situations like this, what is the training you guys go through to make sure that, I mean, you're shooting at the very last possible moment?
Sure. I can tell you beyond and to the exclusion of any reasonable doubt that Chad Nichols took way too many chances in this case because he didn't want to have to shoot this man. And first and foremost, when the door swung open and no one was there and he countered around so he can look inside, the homeowner's pointing the gun at him. Deputy Nichols thought, well, if there's someone outside with a gun and the homeowner's inside with a gun, maybe he's just freaked out, scared. So I certainly don't want to shoot the man in his house with a gun. So he backs away, all the while talking to him. He says, and now the guy's following me outside. He said, now I know he's a problem. He says, but I'm doing my best to get him to give up. That's 15 years of experience and intuitiveness to risk his life in order to avoid taking that man's life, and still he had to do that. So at the end of the day, we train our deputies and we trust them to make the best decisions in a split second. And make no mistake, all of the information we have before us today, Deputy Nichols went above and beyond and took extra risks to his life to avoid having to shoot that man. And I fully support and defend his position. Make no mistake about it, it's a horrible event that Deputy Nichols is going to have to live with, but he was forced into that situation. I am sorry for Mr. Layton and his family. Certainly we'd have done everything we could. Baker acted him, get him help. He had a crisis at home. It's a holiday weekend. He's here without his wife. If in fact his wife died 2 months ago, as reported to us, it's his first Thanksgiving without his wife. And the emotion of it overtook him, it appears.
And to be clear, the deputy wasn't a marked cruiser.
Marked cruiser, uniform car, and in fact, when he shot him, he had backed away from, and you'll see, we'll send a pool cam down for you to see where the car is and where the paraphernalia on the ground is. You'll see he backed from the front door down the side of the house and got behind his marked car. So there was zero chance that he misunderstood that it wasn't a deputy.
What kind of resources are available now for Deputy Nichols moving forward?
We have a mandatory protocol with our employee assistance program. We also have a system in place with our CISM team, our crisis intervention team, that they'll speak with him. And we also have a psychiatrist that we contract with, and we go above and beyond to make sure that our deputy has all the support that he needs during this very traumatic time. And quite frankly, it's traumatic enough when you're shooting a real bad guy, but it's really traumatic when, after it's all over, you find out that he's using you as the vehicle to commit suicide, and he's left you with that baggage. So I hurt for Mr. Layton's family, and I'm sorry we couldn't help him, but I'm also angry with him for forcing our deputy to have to shoot him.
Mr. Layton's gun loaded?
We don't know yet. The gun is still in the yard beside where he fell, and our crime scene is processing the gun. So we don't know whether the gun's loaded or not at this juncture of the investigation.
Are situations more common like this during the holidays?
Absolutely, absolutely. We see our demand for services for those that are in crisis rise around holidays, anniversaries, any special holiday to the person or the family. So once again, it's not unusual for us to work suicides around a holiday. It is highly unusual that they force us as their vehicle to commit suicide, but that's what Mr. Layton did today. Okay?
The deputy was alone, or was it another deputy?
The deputy was alone. Backup deputies were on the way to him, but had not arrived by the time the shooting occurred.
Are you going to share a 911 call?
Not today. We will share the 911 call once our detectives have heard it, and once they have cleared it up. But I've heard it, but obviously we're not going to share it with the public before our homicide team has a chance to hear it and make sure that it, and work it in with their reports.
Body cam video?
There is none.
No video that you're going to share?
No, and we'll check the other houses in the neighborhood too. That's work that we haven't gotten to. If other people have video in their homes, certainly, even though we have an independent witness that said no one was there. Obviously, when we arrived, no one was there. When we listen to the 911 tape, we can tell that he made up the story, but we will look at every piece of video that we can find in this area just to double check, triple check, quadruple check that there was no one there. But there is absolutely not a scintilla of evidence that anyone else was here. Okay?
What kind of weapon was it the man had? A pistol or a rifle?
Excuse me?
What kind of
It was a
weapon
handgun.
Handgun?
Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.